We started off by packing up the van and then praying for it. After all, it was going to be our home for the next 3 days. The journey wasn't easy, and it had its share of bumps and bruises, but it was well worth it. Eventually, we arrived in Dawson City. Where we stayed the night at a quaint little church. It was pastored by a man named Ian, who was also the worship leader. Then it was off to camp. Camp Klondike feels very rustic. It has lots of room to play, and there's always plenty to do. But we were exhausted.
My name is Dahlia.
Dayton Ibbotson.
Michelle Clark.
My name is Hannah Zieber.
Josiah Almos.
Timothy Sessink.
Nathan.
My name's Marika.
The hardest part for me was the amount of driving.
The driving was ridiculous.
The vehicle rides.
Being trapped in a vehicle for like 12 to 13 hours a day.
It's a lot easier to bug people when you're in such close vicinity.
So on the trip I got really sick. We were at camp and I was out for like a day or two and I was just like laying in bed, sleeping.
I was the only driver, and so I drove for 13 hours a day on the way up for 3 days straight.
I slept for like 18 hours or something ridiculous.
When we rolled into the camp, I actually just laid on a lawn for like 2 hours because I was just absolutely exhausted.
Despite that, we quickly got to know the staff. There was John, Sally and Betty, Tim, and Mike. They have a huge heart for these kids, and the camp has been a blessing to the Aboriginal communities since the 70s. However, we were in new territory and outside of our comfort zone.
I think one of the most frustrating things for me on this trip was I had a hard time connecting.
Not knowing what was going on half the time.
I didn't quite know what I was doing, what to expect.
I'm one of those people where I like to know the layout of the day. I like to know what my expectations are.
It was a great stretch for me, being taken out of my comfort zone.
Working in the kitchen the whole time was interesting.
The lack of interaction you have in the kitchen.
Often it was just Marika and I alone. We did a lot of cleaning, a lot of washing dishes.
After the second day, Tim and the director of the camp, Paul, had to come in and give my cabin a little bit of a talking to.
I think the most frustrating part was all the kids like messing with you and poking your buttons and trying to make you angry.
But after that, they were just fine. They were my little angels, pretty much. Even though my cabin did try to light a table on fire, that was pretty great. Well, actually, no, that wasn't great. In the middle of the night, we were all asleep. It wasn't my fault.
But that didn't stop us from investing in the kids. We did everything. We worshipped and had fun.
One of the most impactful things was seeing how God can use what little interaction I did have to still glorify Himself, and how He was able to just get me connected with girls and just I was able to share with them.
I think probably my favorite time at the camp was when I took the First Nations kids and we went out to fish. They love to fish. It's a part of their culture. It's a part of who they are. And we had some great talks. I think some of the best talks that came from this trip weren't the talks that came in the structured time, but were actually the talks that came in the times when we were just out fishing or playing a game. There's so many stories from this trip that I'd love to share. There is many memories of us as a team just around the campfire, worshiping at a gazebo right on the river, just enjoying God's word, just worshiping together.
The best part was just like talking to people and getting to know everybody. It's pretty good.
our devotions on the way there and back.
I know God healed me and people were there for me though, and it was really cool to see everyone come together and support me.
Just getting to know the team as a whole and just getting to know everyone's personality and just really getting to know them deeper and just kind of being unified as a team.
But as soon as it felt like we got started, camp was over. It was time to pack up and go home. And it was just as beautiful on the way home as it was on the way there.
The most exciting thing for me was probably seeing a bear.
Was just being out in God's creation.
We did this really beautiful hike up this mountain, and the view was spectacular.
And just being able to be surrounded by wilderness.
Definitely fishing up in Tombstone.
It was just really cool. I don't know, going out in nature and seeing like mountains and seeing hills and climbing them and seeing bears and just seeing what God created.
And just how untapped the wilderness is in a lot of parts of Canada. That was definitely a cool experience for me.
The camping that we got to do, seeing grizzly bears for the first time in real life.
Definitely fishing.
It's just a beautiful place that God created. I was really glad to see it.
And you could just sit on this little piece of rock basically jutting out, and it was just a really beautiful view.
At over 6,000 kilometers and 6 days of driving, we were exhausted. But we had seen God move, not just with our team, but in the lives of these kids. So we may have been worn out and tired, but it was a beautiful trip and well worth it.